Hey, good afternoon. This is Kevin Gilmore with the National Weather Service New Orleans Baton Rouge office located in Salado, Louisiana. This is your weekly weather briefing for Thursday, November 7th. Starting things off with a situation overview where we'll be discussing all the weather we could be expecting here for the next 5 to 7 days. Starting with today, we got some scattered showers out and around, mostly around coastal areas, and these rain chances will continue today through tomorrow and even increasing this weekend. So we're going to have to monitor for the potential of flash flooding Saturday and Sunday. We'll talk more about that coming up. Temperatures are going to be backing down some due to the rain, which is some good news because we've been really dealing with some very warm, record-breaking temperatures now for a while. But then we're going to talk about Raphael because we know the focus is on that. We got a hurricane that's in the east central Gulf that's slowly drifting west-northwest. It's forecast to weaken and remain to our south, which is some good news there, with no direct impacts expected. However, there will be some indirect impacts, including elevated tides and even some dangerous marine conditions. And then we'll take a peek looking towards the early to middle parts of next week. We're talking about more of a drying pattern and even cooling down mid to late week. So that's some good news there. Starting things off with the current radar imagery across southeast Louisiana and southern Mississippi is showing you those light showers around. Generally hit or miss, not everybody's seeing them, but maybe you'll see them later today and maybe tomorrow. It'll be very scattered at times. We'll mostly dry out tonight, but can't rule out some isolated areas of showers or maybe some drizzle at times. So maybe not a completely dry night. But we'll see kind of generally the same thing tomorrow with these isolated to scattered showers here and there, with no real excessive rainfall issues today through tomorrow. Now we're going to actually step into the tropical weather outlook and start with a broad view of everything, showing you the entire Atlantic basin. We see actually there is an area of disturbed weather just to the north of the Lesser Antilles with a 20% chance of development in the next 7 days. Just something to watch for now. It's way far out there. But obviously Raphael is going to be the main focus. And here's the latest from the National Hurricane Center showing you a Category 2 Hurricane Raphael is slowly drifting to the west-northwest and is expected to continue west for the next several days and weaken as it encounters dry air and wind shear. Those are two things which really harm the development of tropical systems and usually lead them to weaken with time. So the system is expected to weaken and then possibly turn into a tropical storm, weaken into a tropical storm this weekend and then kind of meander across the west central Gulf, not impacting our local area or anywhere across the northern Gulf Coast, which is some good news there. We'll let the system just dissipate, but we'll monitor it, of course. But we may have some indirect impacts, including some coastal flooding and some increased waves and swells. So we'll talk about more of that coming up. But first, we want to actually mention something about the the excessive rainfall potential actually going into Saturday and Sunday. The moisture associated with Raphael will actually surge a little bit north, meeting a cold front coming in from the west. And both of those factors together will help to create more widespread showers and thunderstorms, especially during the day on Saturday. What I have highlighted in that dotted area you see there, that dashed area you see there, is the greater potential for some excessive rainfall, where there could actually be some flash flooding concerns. And you see that does actually get into the northwestern portions of our area. Rainfall totals for now, an area average between around a quarter to a half inch for eastern areas to around 1 to 2, maybe upwards of 2.5 inches for western areas, but could be higher than that. We don't want people to be too tied into those exact values because this is kind of a developing situation where we're watching some of this new model guidance is starting to hit on more of a chance for flooding for western areas. And on the right is the probability of seeing greater than 1 inch of rainfall from 6 p.m. Friday through 6 p.m. Sunday, so the bulk of the whole weekend. We see that the greater probabilities are really hitting on that north central Louisiana areas, but it's creeping into our area too, which is why we got to really watch it. As you see there with the bottom right bullet point, confidence is low with specific areas and amounts for what we're seeing. This could change as we get a little bit closer for the next day or two, so be sure to check back for more updates. And because of that, there is a slight risk of excessive rainfall at threat level 2 out of 4 for northwestern areas. That does include the greater Baton Rouge area. So there is the potential for some flash flooding that we'll have to kind of keep an eye on. But again, we'll be able to provide more detailed updates as we get a little bit closer, especially during the day tomorrow. But we'll keep an eye on that. Now we're going to actually touch into the coastal flooding. We do have some strong easterly winds in response to where Raphael's located, and also a strong ridge nearby, which is helping to funnel the winds in from east to west across the area, which is pushing the water up against mainly east-facing shorelines. This does include areas from Hancock County all the way down to Plaquemines Parish, where we have a coastal flood advisory in effect for tonight. That's going to be because that's going to be during our high tide cycle. It's going to be tonight, generally from 10 o'clock this evening to 8 a.m. Friday, where we could see minor coastal flooding of less than 1 foot above normally higher ground. It'll be in effect also again during the next high tide cycle, 10 p.m. Friday and the 10 a.m. Saturday, where minor coastal flooding around 1 foot above normal dry ground is expected. Something to keep an eye out for. I will say that the chance of this area being expanded going into Friday night and Saturday morning is looking more likely, and even going into the upcoming weekend, these tides will remain elevated. So expect these coastal flood advisories to remain into effect going into this weekend and could be expanded for more areas of coastal southeast Louisiana, could possibly also be the tidal lakes and even across the rest of coastal Mississippi. So if you have any interest along coastal areas that typically sees inundation issues due to coastal flooding during high tide cycles, definitely stay tuned to the latest updates, to the forecast, and be cautious if you're traveling across these areas. Here's a little bit more information. This is a tidal graph, forecast tidal graph. Everything in red has already occurred, and in gray is forecast. So we're going through past to present to future from left to right on this graph, showing you where you get more uncertainty as you go in the future. That's what that gray area is. That's that spread of uncertainty as you get further out. But you see the ups and downs. This is your tidal cycle for Waveland, Mississippi, showing you that, yes, like I just mentioned, the tides will be going up Saturday and Sunday, where, again, I just mentioned, we're going to be likely having those advisories continue for these tidal cycles all the way getting into possibly even early Monday. So something to watch. High tide cycle for near coastal Mississippi will be between 12 and 6 a.m. For Lake Borgne are more towards like 10 to 11 p.m. So overnight high tide cycles, and be aware that some roads could be impassable in some locations. And then I also want to show Grand Isle for the southeast Louisiana portion of our coastline, showing the same thing, showing those tidal levels fluctuating and get a little bit higher, more spread but getting higher. That could cause some minor problems. That's why I mentioned before also, be advised that those advisories that we just talked about could be expanded further to the west and all for across southeast Louisiana, and could get into the tidal lakes as well. We're just going to kind of keep an eye on it and watch this guidance and see if we need to issue that. So be advised around that. High tide cycle for southeast Louisiana, that's getting closer to 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. So overnight hours, there could be some problems getting into some of the local bayous, Barataria Bay. We'll have to watch that too, kind of seeping up. So if you have any type of interest, marine water interest across southeast Louisiana, and are sensitive to these types of tidal fluctuations, definitely check the forecast for the latest updates. And marine impacts. Actually, with the Raphael being where it's at, it's going to create a large, what's called a swell train, or just a large train of waves that could be forming out in the outer Gulf waters, upwards of 10 to 12 feet possible, 20 to 60 nautical miles off the coastal areas. 3 to 5 feet for the tidal lakes and sounds, more like 1 to 2 feet for Lake Pontchartrain and Maurepas. Still elevated. That's going to be due to persistent easterly winds around 20 knots will continue for the next several days. Now, as promised, we're going to look beyond now to beyond the weekend into early next week. We got highlighted there in that square box. There's going to be the potential for heavy rain and excessive rainfall we see for Baton Rouge. And you see in response, the temperatures come down, which is good. And then the front actually tries to push through here, or at least get to the point where the dry air filters down and knocks those low temperatures down too as we get towards the early and middle parts of next week. Temperatures getting down to the low to mid 60s, and a little bit of a teaser beyond this. Wednesday through Friday, there could be a second front that pushes through that knocks temperatures even further down, possibly getting into the 50s and maybe some upper 40s for some of the traditionally colder locations. So that's some good news there. If you're looking for rain, your best bet's going to be Friday through the weekend, and then after that, we're really not seeing any type of excessive rainfall risk all the way through next Friday. So just to summarize everything we discussed, scattered showers, hit or miss today, tomorrow, greater rain chances Saturday and Sunday. We'll have to watch for that isolated flash flood potential, especially those western areas. And in response, the temperatures will back down, but it'll still be a little muggy out for the next few days. We'll be watching Raphael, and you should too, as it slowly drifts west-northwest in the east central Gulf. But we'll be remaining well to our south, and it's expected to weaken for the next several days. Elevated tides in response for those east-facing shorelines. So if you're sensitive to those types of coastal flooding concerns, especially anywhere around the coastal areas, be advised that we will continue to see higher than normal tides all the way into early Monday. And then drying out, like we just talked about, drying out next week, cooling down midweek with a bigger cool down late in the week. So for those cool weather fans, some good news there. And we'll go ahead and end this briefing here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week and a fantastic weekend ahead. Y'all take care.